Picture yourself in the year 1396, standing in the dim, chilly halls of Westminster Abbey. The air is crisp with autumn, your breath fogging as you grip a prayer book, watching servants dart about like shadows. Their hurried steps echo off the stone walls, preparing for a wedding that's got the entire court buzzing with whispers. You're a priest, a quiet witness to history, and the event unfolding before you is unlike anything England has ever seen. The great oak doors groan open, and in strides King Richard II, a striking figure at 29, tall and regal, his golden hair catching the light streaming through the stained glass. He's a king who's weathered wars and rebellions, his presence commanding awe. But it's the tiny figure beside him that makes your heart skip. A girl, barely reaching his elbow, her small hand lost in his gloved one. She's dressed in a French gown so intricate it seems to swallow her slight frame, her dark hair woven with pearls that look too heavy for her. This is Isabella of Valois, a princess from France, no more than 6 or 7 years old, and she's about to become the Queen of England. You steady yourself against the altar rail, your mind racing to make sense of this moment. You've blessed countless unions, joined hands of nobles and commoners alike, but a child bride is a rarity, even in this age where political necessity shapes lives. The Black Death swept through just decades ago, claiming half the population, and kings must act fast to secure their realms. Marriages like this one, you remind yourself, are more binding than any treaty scratched onto parchment. They seal alliances, forge peace where war has raged for generations. As the ceremony begins, you watch Isabella's face. Her large, dark eyes are wide, not with fear but with a child's curiosity, taking in the towering Gothic arches, the flickering candles, the nobles draped in silks and velvets. She's a tiny figure in a world of giants, yet she stands with a quiet dignity, as if she senses the weight of the moment. King Richard speaks his vows, his voice soft, almost tender. This isn't a man driven by desire but a king fulfilling a duty to his people. Everyone knows this marriage won't be consummated. Isabella will be raised at the English court, educated and cared for until she's of age. It's the way of things, you tell yourself, though your heart beats unevenly as you pronounce them husband and wife. This child, now Queen of England, is stepping into a dangerous game of royal politics, where even the innocent can become pawns. You can't help but wonder what lies ahead for her, this girl crowned with a title far heavier than the pearls in her hair. Let's step back from the altar now and travel to where this story begins. Not in England but in the opulent, turbulent court of France. Isabella was born on November 9, 1389, in the Louvre Palace in Paris, the eldest daughter of King Charles VI, a monarch whose reign was as grand as it was troubled. Known as Charles the Mad, her father was a man of two faces. On his best days, he was a loving ruler, showering his children with gifts and laughter. On his worst, he was lost to madness, convinced he was made of glass or hiding from invisible assassins. Imagine being little Isabella, growing up in a palace where one day your father is bouncing you on his knee, the next he's screaming that he'll shatter if he moves. Servants would hustle her away during these episodes, but the fear lingered, a shadow over her childhood. Her mother, Isabel of Bavaria, was a force of nature, beautiful, cunning, and determined to hold the kingdom together when Charles's mind failed. She saw her children, especially Isabella, as pieces on the chessboard of European politics. France in the 1390s was battered by the 100 Years' War, a conflict with England that had raged for nearly 6 decades. Villages were ash, treasuries empty, the people weary of endless fighting. Peace was a desperate dream, and it was in this crucible that Isabella's marriage was forged. The idea sparked in 1395, during secret talks between French and English ambassadors. Richard II had just lost his beloved wife, and of Bohemia, to the plague, leaving him heartbroken and heirless. His advisors pressed him to remarry, but Richard resisted, until the French offered an irresistible deal. Their 6-year-old princess, a dowry of 800,000 francs, and a 28-year truce. The proposal's boldness lay in Isabella's age. Even by medieval standards, Six was young for a royal bride. But the French argued her youth was her strength. She was a clean slate, unscarred by the hatred between the two nations. She'd grow up in England, learning its ways, becoming as English as she was French. Richard's counselors were divided. Some saw the dowry and truce as salvation for a war-torn kingdom. Others feared the marriage would scandalize the nobility. Richard, though, was swayed by something deeper. When he saw Isabella's miniature portrait, his expression softened. Some whispered he saw not just an alliance but a chance to be a father as well as a husband. Negotiations stretched for months. Every detail of Isabella's life debated. Her French servants, her customs, the promise that the marriage wouldn't be consummated until she was mature. In Paris, Isabella played with her dolls, unaware her fate was being sealed across the channel. The wedding happened twice, a testament to its diplomatic weight. The first, in 1396, was at Calais, an English-held port on French soil, a neutral stage for this historic moment. Isabella, just 7, wore a gown of gold so heavy she needed help to walk. Richard knelt to her level to exchange rings, his gentleness noted by those present. A year later, in 1397, she was crowned Queen of England in Westminster Abbey, a spectacle that drew crowds so thick some died in the crush to see her. She processed through London in a litter adorned with roses and fleurs de lis, her tiny crown glinting. The coronation feast lasted 3 days, with jugglers, musicians, and plays celebrating the union of two kingdoms. But even as the wine flowed, some courtiers whispered, "How long could this fragile peace hold?" Isabella settled into life at Westminster Palace, her own apartments staffed with French and English attendants. Her days were filled with lessons, English, court etiquette, the subtleties of noble society. Richard took a personal interest, visiting with gifts, exotic birds from Ireland, books from Oxford, instruments from London's finest craftsmen. He treated her with paternal care, and she grew to anticipate his visits, greeting him with a mix of formality and warmth. She made friends, too, especially Margaret Holland, a girl 2 years older who taught her English games and the unspoken rules of court life. Through Margaret, Isabella learned of the tensions beneath the surface. Richard's clashes with his nobles, the rebellion that marked his early reign, the whispers that he favored his courtiers over the great lords. At 6, 7, 8 years old, she was already absorbing the complexities of power, her sharp mind noting how conversations shifted when she entered a room. By 1398, Isabella was no longer the timid child who'd arrived from France. She spoke fluent English, navigated the palace's maze-like corridors, and studied history and geography with a keenness that surprised her tutors. She loved maps, tracing the channel's coastline with her finger, listening as her tutor explained how this narrow strip of water shaped centuries of war. "Your marriage," he told her, "is a bridge across that divide." At 8, she understood she was more than a girl. She was a symbol of peace. But symbols, as she'd soon discover, could be fragile in a world where power shifted like sand. The air shifts now, doesn't it? We're still in 1399, but the warmth of Westminster has given way to the cold stone of the Tower of London. Isabella, now 9, is no longer just a child queen but a potential pawn in a kingdom unraveling. Her protector, Richard II, is facing the fight of his life, and the new king, Henry IV, holds her fate in his hands. Let's walk through these tense days together, as Isabella learns to survive a court turned against her, her quiet courage guiding her through the storm. Isabella's life in the Tower is a strange blend of courtesy and confinement. Her apartments are comfortable, soft beds, warm fires, but the barred windows and guarded doors remind her she's not free. Her French ladies-in-waiting stay by her side, their loyalty a lifeline. They whisper in their native tongue, careful not to let the English guards overhear. "You are still queen," Madame Duzel, her chief lady, tells her. "Henry hasn't dissolved your marriage or the treaty. As long as that holds, you have value." Value is a word that lingers, a reminder that her worth lies in what she represents. A link to France, a symbol of a peace now fraying. The weeks drag on, the tower her world. She hears the city beyond shouts, bells, the clatter of carts, but news is scarce. Her French ladies bring rumors. Richard is imprisoned at Pontefract Castle. Some say dead, others that he's alive but broken. Isabella feels his absence keenly. Richard wasn't just her husband. He was her guide, the man who brought her books and birds, who knelt to her level. His loss stirs a grief she's too young to fully process, but she knows showing weakness could be dangerous. So she carries herself with a queen's dignity, curtsying to Henry's men, speaking politely, never giving them cause to see her as a threat. Henry IV is an enigma. When he visits, he's formal, calling her Your Grace. But his eyes are sharp, weighing her words. He's a soldier king, unlike the gentle Richard, and his reign is shaky. Nobles who backed his coup are restless, rebellions simmering in Wales and Scotland. Isabella's presence complicates things. She's a reminder of Richard's reign, a tie to France that Henry can't ignore. Some advisors urge sending her back to France to renegotiate peace on his terms. Others argue she's too valuable to release. Her father won't risk war while she's in English hands. Isabella overhears these debates through her ladies, piecing together the chessboard she's on. She plays her role with a skill beyond her years. She's polite, her manners flawless, but she never forgets who she is. When Henry's men question her, she answers carefully, never betraying Richard's memory or her father's interests. Walk a tightrope, Madame Duzel advises. Be a queen, but not a threat. Isabella takes this to heart, her responses measured, her demeanor calm. She's learned from Margaret Holland and her tutors how to read a room, sense power's currents. Even at 9, she's no ordinary child. She's a queen who's seen madness, war, and betrayal, and she's learning to navigate it all. The turning point comes in early 1400, when word reaches the tower that Richard is dead. The news hits like a blow. Rumors confirm he didn't die naturally. Henry's men likely ensured his end at Pontefract, a convenient accident. For Isabella, it's a personal loss. Richard was her protector, the closest thing to a father since leaving France. She mourns in private, her French ladies shielding her. But the news carries a darker message. If Henry could kill an anointed king, what might he do to a child queen who's outlived her purpose? Soon after, Henry's government delivers an ultimatum. Isabella can return to France, but only if she acknowledges Henry as the rightful king and renounces any claim to the English throne as Richard's widow. It's a clever move. Her agreement would legitimize Henry's rule and dissolve the treaty. For Isabella, it's a brutal choice. Accept exile and erase her 3 years as queen, or refuse and risk indefinite imprisonment. Her French advisors are split. Some urge her to take the deal, return to her father's court. Others insist she stand firm, as Richard's legitimate widow, England's rightful queen. At 10, she grapples with a decision that could reshape 2 kingdoms. She weighs her options for weeks, torn between longing for home and loyalty to Richard's memory. Accepting Henry's terms feels like betraying the peace he died for. Yet refusing risks everything. Her father's voice tips the scale. During a lucid moment, Charles VI demands her return, warning that delays will be seen as hostility. Faced with war's threat, Henry relents. The terms of her release are vague, letting both sides save face. In the summer of 1401, Isabella boards a ship for France, leaving behind the only home she's known for 5 years. The journey is bittersweet. She leaves Westminster's stone walls, the gardens where she played with Margaret, the hall where she was crowned. France feels foreign now. At 11, she speaks French with an English accent, prefers English fashions, and must relearn her father's court's etiquette. Her reunion with her parents is strained. Charles, lost in madness, barely recognizes her, while her mother, Isabel, sees her as a diplomatic asset, a source of English intelligence. Isabella navigates this with the care she showed in the tower, answering questions cautiously, guarding her loyalties. Back in France, Isabella is no longer a child but not yet an adult. Her time as queen has shaped her, giving her a perspective few match. She's a curiosity at court, a girl who's survived 2 kingdoms' intrigues. Her mother plots her next marriage, eyeing alliances to strengthen France. But Isabella, now 11, has her own ideas. She's seen what political marriages can do, offer protection, but collapse in an instant. Whoever she marries next must see her as more than a pawn. The French court of 1401 is a dangerous place, rife with anti-English sentiment and factional rivalries. Charles's madness leaves a power vacuum, nobles vying for control. Isabella walks a fine line, avoiding suspicion while staying true to the affection she felt for Richard and her English friends. Her mother's protection is a double-edged sword. Isabel cares for her but expects her to serve French interests. When asked about English defenses, Isabella gives vague answers, protecting those who were kind to her without betraying her homeland. In 1402, news of rebellions against Henry IV stirs the court. Some nobles see a chance to invade England, using Isabella as a symbol to legitimize their cause. She's horrified at the thought of French armies ravaging England in her name, remembering her servants, tutors, friends. When asked her opinion, she speaks carefully, warning that an invasion would be costly and uncertain. Her restraint earns criticism from war-hungry nobles, but moderates admire her wisdom. At 12, she's a diplomat, balancing loyalty to France with her ties to England. By 1403, a new chapter opens. Charles, Duke of Orleans, her cousin and a powerful noble, proposes marriage. At 29, he's the same age Richard was, but Isabella, nearing 14, sees him differently. Charles is cultured, a patron of the arts, and treats her as an equal. Their courtship is cautious, shaped by the chaos. Henry IV's shaky reign, France's brewing civil war. Isabella is drawn to Charles, not just for his status but for his passion and intelligence. He tells her, "I want to marry Isabella of Valois, not just the former Queen of England." For the first time, she feels seen as herself. The marriage is sealed in 1406, a grand affair at Notre Dame Cathedral. Isabella, now 16, walks down the aisle in blue silk, her confidence a far cry from the child bride of a decade ago. The ceremony is a celebration of French power, with troubadours and feasts that last days. Isabella feels at home, accepted not as a failed experiment but as a valued member of the royal family. Her new life with Charles is a breath of fresh air after England's tension. Their court at Blois becomes a haven for artists and scholars, filled with music and poetry. Isabella throws herself into this world, commissioning books, hosting poets, writing to scholars across Europe. Her English experience gives her a unique lens. She sees connections between French and English culture others miss, fostering intellectual exchange. She's not just a duchess. She's a patron, a creator, a force. Charles values her mind, consulting her on their duchy's affairs. She begins to see herself as a co-ruler. Her education in England, hours with maps and chronicles, paying off as she navigates French alliances. Their first child, Jean, arrives in 1407, and Isabella's joy is boundless. She's determined to be a present mother, unlike her own, nursing Jean herself despite the court's disapproval. She whispers promises to her daughter in French and English, vowing to give her choices Isabella never had. The birth deepens her bond with Charles, a doting father who steals moments to read to Jean or watch her sleep. But the world intrudes. Henry IV's struggles in England continue, rebellions threatening his throne. In France, Charles VI's madness leaves the kingdom rudderless. Nobles like Charles's father, Louis of Orleans, vying for power. The Duke of Burgundy, a rival, has his own ambitions, tensions simmering. In November 1407, everything changes. Louis of Orleans is assassinated in Paris, cut down by Burgundian agents. The news shakes Isabella. Charles inherits his father's titles and enemies, becoming a target in a brewing civil war. Their carefree life at Blois vanishes, replaced by bodyguards and suspicion. Isabella's movements are restricted, her letters watched. Charles, once a poet, hardens, driven by vengeance. She supports him, but fears France will follow England's path into chaos. Their second child, a son named Charles, arrives in 1408, a bright spot. Isabella pours energy into raising him, ensuring he learns responsibility as well as privilege. She chooses his tutors, shapes his studies, teaching him languages and diplomacy. While Charles campaigns against the Burgundians, Isabella manages their territories, handling logistics with surprising skill. Her letters show a woman in control of her fate, no longer the confused child shuffled between courts. The civil war escalates, tearing France apart. Villages burn, trade stalls, the people suffer. Isabella sets up charities, negotiates safe passage for refugees, earning a reputation as a compassionate leader. In 1409, their third child, Marguerite, is born, but the pregnancy nearly kills Isabella. Complications leave her weak, hovering near death. Charles stays by her side, prayers for her recovery echoing across Europe. She survives, but her health is broken, her doctors warning that another pregnancy could be fatal. This changes her relationship with Charles. Their physical love, once passionate, becomes cautious, a loss that weighs on her. Despite her frailty, Isabella remains a force. She dives deeper into governance, co-ruling as Charles fights. When the Duke of Burgundy seeks an alliance with Henry IV, she uses her English connections to dissuade intervention, sending messages through intermediaries. Her diplomacy is subtle, rooted in her dual perspective. She's no longer the child tracing maps. She's a strategist, seeing patterns others miss. Her health worsens in 1411. Chronic fatigue and respiratory issues sap her strength, but her mind stays sharp. She spends more time in prayer, perhaps sensing the end, but refuses to slow down. She oversees her children's education, manages the duchy, supports peace talks between the Orleans and Burgundian factions. Though the talks fail, her role as a mediator earns praise, cementing her as a voice of reason. As 1412 dawns, Isabella stands at life's edge, only 20 but carrying a lifetime's wisdom. Her cough worsens, her body wasting, likely from tuberculosis, though her doctors have no name for it. She faces mortality with the courage she's shown all her life, preparing for her children's future, securing Charles's position. She rises each morning, determined to live fully, spending hours with Jean, Charles, and Marguerite, teaching them, ensuring they carry her values. Courage, compassion, duty. She writes instructions for their care, knowing she may not see them grow. To Charles, her husband, she's a rock, advising on strategy even as her strength fades. They talk late into the night, of poetry, music, the dreams they shared in Blois. The French Civil War rages, the Orleans-Burgundian feud tearing the kingdom apart. Isabella's peace efforts have faltered, but she persists, corresponding with moderates, urging restraint. Her letters blend diplomacy and heart, her reputation as a compassionate leader growing. Stories spread of her aid to refugees, her kindness to the poor. Even in frailty, she's a symbol of hope, showing humanity can shine in dark times. As spring turns to summer, she senses the end. She spends more time in the chapel, praying for her children, her husband, the peace she's fought for. Her bravery becomes legendary. Servants whisper of the Duchess who faces death fearlessly. She dictates her will, ensuring her children's education and Charles's alliances. To her ladies, she's calm, even humorous, joking about gowns she'll never wear. In private, she grieves for the time she won't have with her family. On September 13, 1412, Isabella of Valois dies at 20. The news ripples across Europe, a wave of grief for a woman who touched so many lives. Her funeral at the Celestine Convent in Paris is a spectacle, nobles from France, England, and beyond honoring her. Charles is shattered, losing his wife, partner, confidant. The cortege is one of the largest of its time, a testament to her impact. Her children, Jean, Charles, Marguerite, grow up to carry her legacy, her son a poet, her daughters forging strong alliances. France feels her absence. Without her voice, the Civil War grows bloodier, the peace she dreamed of slipping away. We've walked through Isabella's life together, my friends, from a 6-year-old bride to a queen, a prisoner, a duchess, a mother. At 20, she left a mark that echoes through history. Her life was shaped by forces beyond her control, yet she wielded her own power, carving out a space for love, wisdom, compassion. She was born into a world where children were pawns, yet she transcended that, becoming a leader in England and France. In the Tower, she showed courage beyond her years, holding her own against Henry IV. In France, she reinvented herself, becoming a patron, a diplomat, a mother who vowed her children would have choices she never did. What strikes me is her resilience. In a brutal age, war, plague, betrayal constant, she created beauty, built relationships that mattered. Her patronage, her aid to the suffering, her quiet diplomacy were acts of defiance against a world that saw her as a symbol. Even as her health failed, she lived with purpose. Her death was a tragedy, but her life a triumph, a testament to the human spirit's ability to rise above constraint. Her story challenges us to see the past differently. It's easy to judge her world, a child bride, medieval violence, through modern eyes. But Isabella's life shows the humanity beneath. She wasn't just a product of her time. She was a person with fears, hopes, choices. Her marriages, born of necessity, became partnerships of respect. Her losses, Richard, her health, her dreams of peace, shaped her into someone who inspired others. She reminds us that history isn't just kings and wars, but people making choices that ripple across centuries. As we close this grim Chronicles tale, think about Isabella's legacy. She showed that even in dark times, one person's courage can shine. Her story lives in the songs at her funeral, the manuscripts she commissioned, the children she raised. What do you take from her life? Maybe it's that we all have agency, even when the world feels overwhelming. Maybe it's a call to find beauty and kindness, no matter the circumstances. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what part of Isabella's story hit you hardest? Hit that like button if you're moved, and subscribe for more tales from history's shadows. Until next time, keep exploring the past with me, and let's honor voices like Isabella's, reminding us what it means to be human.